Aloha, mai kako. Can you hear me? Hello?
Oh, my thing fell off.
Oh, I think it's... Aloha, mai kako.
Aloha.
Good evening and welcome. My name is Sheen Rue. I'm with UH Manoa Outreach College. We are the producers of the Asia Pacific Dance Festival. Welcome to the 2024 festival. We are in our 13th year, and we've been very honored to do a festival focused on hula this year, on the legacy, lineage, and the caretakers of hula. Facilitated, curated, and taught by Kumuhula, Kawaikapuokalani Hewitt, and Kumuhula Maelia Loebenstein Carter. They have done a fabulous job this week. They've been teaching a workshop, facilitating talk story with our Kumuhula around the island, and this is our 5th event of the week, 5 events in 5 days. So thank you so much. A big mahalo to our mighty Kumuhula. Tomorrow evening, here at Kennedy Theater at 7:30, we have our culminating performance. Those who are hearing this, you get a special promo code, Talk Story. Please enter that for $20 tickets, and we still have seats, so please do come for our culminating performance here at Kennedy Theater. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Theater and Dance Department, East-West Center Arts Program, the National Endowment for the Humanities, Hawaii Council for the Humanities, Kawaikapuokalani Center for Hawaiian Studies, Hula Preservation Society, Hawaii State Public Library System, Western States Arts Federation, and Hawaii State Foundation on Culture and the Arts. And we also want to thank our individual donors as well. At the end of tonight's event, please do help us by filling out the evaluation forms so we can continue to improve and see our impact and continue to get funding for these unique cultural programs. So without further ado, I'll pass it off to Kumu Kawaikapu to introduce our full panel tonight. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Mahalo. I would like to open this evening with an oli to begin our interview with these fabulous kumuhula and to set the tone of the theme of this year, which is Ke Kupuana o Kahula, the growth process. There will be 2 oli, one a prayer and a blessing, and then I'll get to the Kupuana oli and then explain the process and then explain all the kumuhula or introduce all the kumu that are here. Aloha mai oe ke apua I loko kalani e kalani kau I ke alane o ka po mai oe ke apua mai ke alane o mama o mai ko mai ke apua o la ka aina o na apua o la na ali o Hawaii ne malo no ke apua I loko kalani e aloha no aloha no aloha no aloha no kupuana 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 la ke kupuna kupu ke keiki I ka opio kupu ka opio I ka makua kupu ka makua I ke kupuna kupuana 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 pili ke kupuna I na au makua kupuana 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 The word is kupu. Kupu to sprout, kupu to grow. Kupuana, growing, becomes the word kupuna, or elder, also ancestors. So the oli says that from the time you are a child, you begin this growth process. into kupuna. You grow from that child, and you're gathering memories of a child, and you grow to the next level, you become a teenager. And at that level, again, you're gathering memories and thoughts and learning processes, and then you move to the next level. You become the makua. From the makua, you continue the growth process, and then you become the kupuna. But it doesn't end there. The kupuna is at that time where you become the role model, where you provide the vision we call the ike kupuna. You provide that vision because you have the authority. You are ordained by the aumakua. That's what the chant is saying. So when you reach that level of kupuna, you have great, great responsibilities. You become, at that level, the embodiment of all the aumakua. You are the authority for the family. You serve to be that. And in the theme, Ke kupuana o ka hula, you're going through that very same process of growth in the hula tradition. Gathering the knowledges, the enlightenments, the memories from the time you come in like a child, and you grow from that moment into the opio, that teenager, and then you're growing, you continue to become the makua. And then the kupuna, starting as a haumana o ka hula, going up each and every level, serving different roles and responsibilities in the halau, kokua kumu alakai, and the many different roles and responsibilities. And that is the theme, and that was the drive for this Asia Pacific dance festival, the kupuana of all things in the hula. So at this time, I'd like to introduce the kumu hula that have been participating from the beginning. Of course, I want to introduce Mayor Loebenstein Carter because she was the one that got me involved. So from day one, she was my helper with all the things that I had to do with the Asia Pacific Dance Festival. And prime example of the kupuana process, because not only did she direct everything that I needed to do, but she still picks me up every day and brings me here. And so talk about taking care of kupuna, you know, I may look young and beautiful, but I have 7 children and 15 grandchildren and 6 great-grandchildren that I take care of. And so you need that support. And being able to kokua and kako'o the kupuna, that's really, really great because you have learned well and you understand your role and responsibility. It's not just ask the kupuna to come. Well, how are they going to get there? You got to take care of them. And she has done that role very, very well. So big round of applause. This is Kumu Maelia Loebenstein Carter. One of the very first kumuhula that came and did a presentation, and that presentation, I believe, was Pearl City Library. And this is kumuhula Leialoha Lim Amina. And please, a big round of applause. And she came, and if you missed that presentation, she got up and danced Kauli Lua. And Kauli Lua, again, is an amazing reflection of Ke kupuana o ka hula. And I'll talk more about that just before we get into the talk story with all of the kumuhula. Next, and last night, we had a presentation, and this presentation was at the Kapolei Library, and kumuhula Sonny Ching and kumuhula Lopaka, Igarta-De, Vera both came out with their students, and they did a fabulous presentation and talk story about hula. So let's give them a round of applause. This is our kumuhula Leimomi ho, and She is here to add support, wisdom, and knowledge because Kumuhula Leimomi has also been involved in the hula tradition from the time she was very young, and she has grown up into that process, and she'll be able to reflect a lot about that process of Ke Kupuana o Kahula. Again, a round of applause for Kumuhula Leimomi. So, without further ado, last night we were here and was at the art building, and we were watching video, beautiful video by the Hula Preservation Society. And the people that spoke was Uncle George Naope, very well-known kumuhula, full of wisdom and knowledge about hula and hula traditions. And then we heard interviews from kumuhula, that was Pulu'elo Park. We heard from Auntie Kahili Cummings, and we heard from Auntie Queenie Ventura Dowsett. Now, one of the things that they reflected on, and I was listening very, very carefully, and again, I was a moderator last night, they talked about this one particular mele, and that mele was Kauli Lua Ike Anu o Vai Ale Ale. And then they spoke about learning to drum, to play the drum, and then to chant with the drum, and then learning the words, and how difficult it was because they couldn't write the words down. They had to learn it from memory. Today we have a cell phone, we can record, we have Apple computer, we have iPad, we have all these tools to help us learn and memorize all of these things, but they all spoke, and these were the kupuna, about what a challenge they had, because the pahu drum is known by many as the temple drum. Also, they referred to the learning of Kauli Lua as a temple drum dance. All right, they spoke about their difficulties, and they spoke about the challenges at that time learning these mele. So we're going to start by asking the kumuhula, because I know, I've seen it myself, when students are challenged to play the pahu drum, they are frightened of the pahu drum. They are frightened of the pahu drum, and many of them are challenged by learning to play and coordinate the timing of the drumming to the singing. So we're going to go right down the line here, and we're going to talk to Kumuhula Leimomi Ho a Kalamayau, to Leialoha Lim Amina, and ask her your reflections about the pahu drum, and perhaps even the mele itself, Kauli Lua Ike Anu o Vai Ale Ale.
Okay. Yeah, I learned that hula actually from Uncle George Naope while Auntie Iolani was taking a break from hula, and I believe he was her protege during that time. And I remember listening to the voice, and the drumming didn't sound like they were synchronized, you know. It was like the voice was on a different rhythm than what the drumming was, like an over. And I was very mesmerized by that, because I said, wow, they could, you know, they could still keep the timing. And just recently, about maybe a year or so ago, we were on Kauai, and we were asked to, at one of these functions, to get up and drum. Do you folks remember that?
Yeah, I was there.
And to do Kauli Lua. And I remember practicing it, and you know, even talking to Uncle George Naope, because he was the one that I learned it from, and I went to see him, and he would often tell me, he says, oh, you get the ear already. You already hear it because it's in your kino. So, and I've got to say that when we did that in Kauai, it just came back. It was like it was already ingrained into me from just the learning process and the doing the hula. So yeah, it's not an easy piece, because we were using pahu as well as I think, were we using punio during that time?
Yes.
We were using punio too. And I learned it two ways. I learned it with pahu only, And then I also learned it with pahu and puniu. So yeah, it's just wonderful to think that years later, now I learned this in the 60s, and that still is ingrained inside. So I'm very, very grateful about that. So mahalo.
Maika'i mahalo nui loa. Kumuhula Sonny Ching. You know, what is your experience with the pahu drum, and how was that learning process for you? Why are you looking at me?
For those of you that don't know, Lehua Kawaikapuokalani is actually one of my teachers also. So whenever I'm in his presence, I kind of revert to being 15 years old when I began training, studying with him, which was a long time ago. So for us, yeah, the pahu, and it's kind of interesting that a part of this festival, this Asia Pacific Dance Festival, is a focus on the hula pahu. So a part of the presentation, and this is for tomorrow, I know at the end of the presentation, Kumu wanted us to come together, the different groups performing, and to do, one of the chants he wanted us to do together is Kaulilua. And we came to the realization that our current group of dancers do not know Kaulilua. We do have some senior dancers that used to be in the wahine or kane class, but they serve in other functions within the halau, or it might be in another class, that learn those dances. And for us, that's because the pahu dances has this connection to the temple. And so there's this sacredness about the subject matters and the presentation of the hula pahu. So we're very, very particular and careful on who we teach our hula pahu to. I mean, even last night at our rehearsal, I had to ask these dancers, which one of you knows a ko'olauau? And out of the 9 dancers that were there, none of them knew it. And so I turned to one of our former dancers, who's actually a kumuhula, but does not have a halau, but who had come to halau last night and was drumming with kumupaka. And I know he knows the dance. So I turned to him and I was like, what are you doing on Saturday? You want to jump up and dance Kaulilua be our representative for the performance on Saturday? So I'm not sure. He's going to try. He runs his own business. So yeah, so for us, the hula pahu is very special. The drumming is different from the use of the ipu. There are steps associated with the pahu that we don't do in the ipu. I remember in one Merry Monarch Festival where Kawaikapu was a judge, and in our solo presentation, my student did a step, but a pahu step, but it was with the use of a ipu. We were using the ipu in this presentation. So his score is really the only score I care about because he's my teacher. The rest of the scores, of course, matter, but I want to know what my teacher thinks. And of course, on the bottom, on the comment section wasn't that a pahu step in the middle of your dance? You know, and I was going, yeah. So the mixing of the two really shouldn't be done. And I was reminded of that in that presentation that we did.
You know, the song Kaulilua is a part of what is known as the trilogy in the hula pahu tradition. So you have Kaulilua iki anu o vai ale ale, then you have a ko'olauau, and then you have au ia. And as I was growing in the tradition of hula, I had to be trained in the hula pahu. Now, Auntie Emma DeFries was one of my primary teachers, along with my grandmother, who learned from Sally Kawaikapuokalani Woods Naluai. And then they took me to learn from Auntie Lani Kalama. And it is with Auntie Lani Kalama that I learned the trilogy. And for those older teachers, those senior teachers, that trilogy is so very important in the learning and understanding of their relationship to hula kahiko and the temple dances, and also hula kuahu. So I knew May's grandma, and I traveled with May's grandma. We judged competition, and she was very, very enlightened in hula, wonderful person, very strict, very disciplined. And I learned to be just like that from her. You know, as a young kumuhula, as a judge, I asked her to come to halau. She sat with me, guided process. And then when we went to judge, I sat by her again, and she told me what I needed to look for and how I needed to judge. May was then a little girl. But in reflection of the hula pahu and those traditions, reflect a little bit about your relationship with hula pahu.
So, my relationship really goes back to the whole theme, ke kupuana o ka hula. So as a little girl, I was not allowed to touch the pahu. I wasn't allowed to dance hula pahu. I lived with my kumu. My kumu was my grandmother. And so she was already up in age. So we didn't learn as young girls. We didn't learn because she always said, "You're not ready. You're immature. I'll tell you when you're ready." Well, she hollered. She left us. And we still didn't have hula pahu. And like Kawaikapu had said, I remember going with her to his halau as a young girl and watching her mentor him. So when she left this realm to go to the realm of our kupuna and the aumakua, he then kind of became my mentor. Because when I needed to talk to someone, I would talk to my grand-aunt, my grandmother's sister, but I would always ask his opinion as well because he spent so much time. And I remember my grandmother saying, "You'll know when it's time." Because in the old tradition, if a kumuhula was not well versed in a certain style, whether it was hula pele or if it was hula pahu or if it was hula ili or ilio, there are so many different veins of hula that not, when we talk about aohe pauka ike ka halau ho'okahi, not all knowledge is held in one halau, and some kumuhula weren't well versed in all of the styles. They would then send their haumana to a peer or a relative and say, "Please train my dancer in this style." And that was the old way. It wasn't the way where it's like, "Oh, I want to learn this. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to go learn this from this kumu." You were either sent or you were chosen. And so grandma would always say that, when it's time, you'll know. When it's time, you'll know. Well, it came to a point where Kawaikapu said, "I'm going to teach you. I'm going to teach you the hula pahu. Get over here and we're going to do it." And that's how I did the hula pahu. It didn't come from grandma. It came from him. And so then now I have a responsibility, because now the same way he's going to clock me if we do it wrong, if the ho'opa'a is wrong, because it's a reflection of Auntie Lani Kalama, who taught it to him. And so that's the whole kupuana process. So as we were getting into this conference, same thing, when he was like, "Okay, everybody's going to do it," I was like, not all my girls are ready. I was like, maybe there might be 3, there might be 1. I don't know. We'll know tomorrow after rehearsal who's worthy. Whatever. And I'm like, you girls better look smart on stage, because if Kawaikapu says they're not dancing, they're not dancing. And that's eyala. That's the way it is. Because that's ke kupuana o ka hula.
You know, you mentioned Auntie Lani Kalama, and I said earlier that she taught me hula pahu. But during the time I was learning hula pahu from Auntie Lani Kalama, so was kumuhula Leimomi ho. And we'll talk more about this apono of hula. Who confirms who, because who knows who was there, who saw, and that's the ike of the apono and the ike kupuna, this experiential knowledge through the hula. So I remember when I would go to Auntie Lani Kalama's home, Auntie Leimomi Ho just finishing her classes, and that's where we met and said hello. And Auntie Leimomi had her classes in the living room. Auntie Lani took me out on the beach to dance on the sand. And again, the focus at that time was just to learn the hula pahu. And again, it was a challenge for me, but also knowing that there were others that were being taught. And so now we're going to ask Auntie Leimomi Ho, Kumuhula Leimomi Ho, to reflect her time there and learning these hula pahu numbers.
Wow. Well, my introduction to Kaulilua was when I was a little girl of 14 years old. We had gone to Kona for a performance. And I remember Mama saying that one morning, okay, go get your pahu, we're gonna go for a ride. Your pahu, we're going to go for a ride. And she always told me, don't ask questions. So, okay, grab my pahu, fix my hair. So off we go, and we go to Hulihe'e Palace, because that's where Auntie Lokalia, my grandmother, was at the time. And so Mama did her oli to Auntie. Auntie welcomed us in. And it was that day that I was introduced to Kaulilua. Auntie Lokalia taught it to me that morning in her living room. And I was in awe, because this is so new to me, and I'm only, 14 years old. And then we get on the car, and Mama says, okay, now you focus. You're going to dance that tonight. And I was like, huh? Tonight? Okay, so when we went to the performance, it was at that park. What's that park over there, right there in Kona? They have that park, I forget the name. Anyways, right in the center of Kona, we got there, right there in the middle, across the church, no, I don't remember.
Where is this? In Kona?
In Kona.
Right in Kona,
Right.
right there across of the church, the Catholic church across the street.
Oh, across the street.
Yeah. So we get there, and then Mama gets me dressed, and when we walk in, Auntie Lokalia was sitting at her pahu, but she was just sitting there, you know, just her on the pahu. So Mama dresses me, and then the program starts. So she says, okay, it's your turn. So she looks at Auntie, Auntie looks at Mama, and then Auntie Lokalia just looks at me and nods. And she goes into her trance, and that's how it was. I started to dance, and it was like, oh my gosh. So I've never forgotten that awesome moment, but I never learned to drum a pahu until Mama passed. Sadly, Mama passed. But Auntie Nana took me under her wings, and it was Auntie Nana who then taught me the trilogy. And I was in awe with that pahu. I still am till today. It just does something to you. And so like all of us, our students need to earn the right to learn those dances. And so within halal, not everybody knows it. Just my older ones that I feel have deserved to learn it. So we don't just, teach it to anyone. Because to us it's so important, yeah. And we hold it close. And for me, that memory with Auntie Lokalia, that will be a memory forever that I cherish.
So last night, as I was listening to all the senior kumuhulas that were interviewed, and the only one that is still with us is Auntie Queenie Ventura. And every now and then, when I have the time, I go to see her in Hilo. And the reason is because when Uncle George Naope passed away, and George Naope, Uncle George was the one that came to Apono, our Uniki, when it was on the Big Island. The next person in line, through the lineage of Auntie Iulani Luahine was Auntie Queenie Ventura. So she would come to my home and sit and watch the process. What they did speak about was that close relation to the pahu drum, but you're right, they also mentioned that to play the pahu drum, you had to earn that role and that responsibility. You know, I've seen many times where everybody goes and jumps on the pahu. It's like, oh, we're going to have a party now, let's all play pahu drum. But for the older senior teachers, that drum was sacred. That drum represented our ancestors, our traditions, the heiau, the temple dances. You had to be that special student to come and learn to play that pahu drum, to sit at that pahu drum. It is a process, ke kupuana o ka hula, where you learn and you grow. So, Lopaka, how do you feel about that process and your years of training, and have you grown into that process, and are you playing the pahu drum?
Yes, I am. First of all, before I say anything, I would like to thank Kawaikapu for allowing me to be here and to sit with these panel of kumuhula. I'm humbled and a little bit pu'iwa because I was an olapa first, and all of these kumu here have judged me and my hula brothers on stage, and to sit here now and to talk with them, to be amongst them, it's very humbling to be here. So I want to thank you, Kumu, for allowing me to be here. Because I did tell Kumu, Sonny, you go, you don't know it. And he said, no, you need to come. It's now na kumu hula. So my memory of Kaulilua, I was very honored to be taught that by actually his aunt. And it wasn't until I was 30 years old, and we've been around pahu, the pahu drum itself, but like everyone has said, we couldn't touch it. And don't ask questions about it, because it will be shared to you when you're ready and when you're matured enough, and that you could take care of the kuleana that comes with it, because it's a whole different vibe or a different feeling that you need to, maturity that you need to have once you sit behind the pahu and once you put your hands on it. So it wasn't until Auntie Marjorie Kekaoha, and I'm thinking about it because it's not like I forgot, but it was way in the back of my head that I had a one-on-one lesson with her. And Auntie Marjorie Kekaoha is also kumuhula. She is the second daughter of Kumu's grandmother, Lina Pu'ainahau Eliakala Nahulu Guerrero. She's no longer here, and that's why I feel very honored right now that I was able to learn that from her. And that was a choice that Kumu had, that she would teach it and pass down what his mother, his aunts, and what his grandmother, my mother, did as well, because she was also a dancer under Grandma Lina, Auntie May, and Auntie Alice. Doing kaulilua, or being able to perform that mele, the coordination of your hands, the reflection of your voice, your integrity while you're behind the pahu is so different. It takes you to another place of clarity. Till today, like everyone else has said, and also Kumusani, that it wasn't until last night that no one knows kaulilua in our halau. The last olapa that had learned kaulilua was the 6 other lala that unikied with me 14 years ago. It's never been taught again, nor performed unless we are all together. So it is kept very safe. It's not something that we're going to go into Waikiki and perform. There's a place, there's a time, there's a space to do these types of mele. And also the olapa needs to be makaukau to be able to emote how they're feeling and to physically do the the steps correctly, and to have that pilina between the ho'opa'a and the olapa to bring what is necessary to perform this particular dance, or any pahu dance for that matter. So I have grown a lot, but I have so much more to grow, and I'm glad that I'm the last one to talk because I'm listening to what they're saying, and it's making me think. And that's the kupu in me right now. I'm growing right now as I sit here because it makes me reflect on my years as an olapa alaka'i, and now as I hold the title kumuhula.
I just want to add one thing to what he said. I'm so glad he brought it up, his learning of Kaulilua and my Auntie Marjorie Kekawoha. When I first began teaching, I began teaching with kupuna. I taught a group of kupuna at Paki Park. When the halau began to expand and I began to teach men and women, and at the beginning, I didn't really want to teach the things that my grandma taught. I kind of wanted to hold it to me. And then it was actually my aunts, my mom's sisters, that said, what was the purpose if you're going to keep it to yourself? So when I began to say, okay, let's learn this, or let's learn this, I would actually ask my Auntie Marjorie Kekawoha, can you please come to the halau and watch this and make sure I'm transmitting it correctly, especially with the pahus. So yeah, I'm so glad he remembers that interaction with Auntie Marjorie. And actually, we've been very blessed. Kawaikapu, the things that I don't remember and I asked to relearn from him, he gladly teaches to Lopaka too. So
I want to reflect on another thing that I watched last night, listening to all these senior kumuhula. It's the proverb, Ike aku, Ike mai. And each of them spoke very, very lovingly, emotionally, about the people that taught them. Ike aku, Ike mai. Knowledge that is given, knowledge that is remembered. And sometimes we tend to stray away from these very foundational things in the hula tradition. Recognize and be recognized. Share the information as it was shared to you. But never forget the source of the information, because that proverb reminds us that like a mo'okuauhau and a mo'olelo, there's a lineage to all of this. So we're going to go back to Leialoha, Lim Amina, and ask her to reflect lineage, your learning, and to speak a little bit about your teachers. And in this kupuana process, who guided that for you?
You know, I'm listening to everyone speak about, you know, just the mele kaulilua. And I'm reflecting here because I learned the trilogy and parts of the trilogy from not one kumuhula. I had the privilege of learning from Auntie Iolani Luahine when I was still a teenager back in 1970. And like I said earlier, I was then sent to Uncle George Naope, and he was the one that helped us to do the hula pahu. That's where I learned the trilogy from originally there. I did not get taught how to do the ho'opa'a until way later. As I was coming through time, of course I went back to Auntie Iolani, and I remember sharing with Kawaikapu that I went through tu'uniki with her, and that was on different levels of learning certain mele from her, and also from Uncle George too. Then I moved to Oahu to attend the University of Hawaii here in 1976. And I had the privilege of meeting Pilahi Paki because I was going through some turmoil in my life, knowing that I did not know enough about hula to become a teacher, and that I needed more ike. Of course, I do have a hula lineage, and I will go through that, but let me just try and get this across. Through Pilahi Paki, I was introduced, actually not introduced, sent to Auntie Nana Kalama to learn only one mele, and that was Au'aia, and to do that mele as a presentation, opening her lectures wherever Pilahi would speak. And so I had learned that Au'aia from her. Years later, in 2003, I was placed, I had the opportunity to learn from Uncle George Holokai, who learned from Tom Hiona. And we got to learn his trilogy too. And it's all not the same. And I've got to say that, you know, some of the drumming was different, some of the presentation of the motions, and you had to remember whose motions belong to who. And sometimes that can get very, very complicated. And I have to sit and really ponder on it. Even like when I did the thing in the library, I had to remember what was taught to me by Uncle George Naope. And I found out consequently afterwards through him that most of those motions came from Auntie Iolani. So learning the hula pahu, I did not learn the drumming till way later. And what I was trying to say earlier is, it was as if the drumming was already instilled within, that when it took to doing the pahu, it just naturally just flowed, because probably I had heard it so many times that I was able to chant it. And it was such a joy to do that one that I was talking about earlier on Kauai. Now getting back to what you were saying, about learning from my lineage, I found out that I have many lines of hula that comes to me from all of these different kumus that I've learned from. I am an example of ohepau ka'ike i ka halau ho'okahi wale no. In some instances, I was sent to learn from certain people. I think you heard that already from me. And that would have me on multiple lineages. From my Kohala one, it would be my mother. I did not know that she was a kumu hula until she passed in 2017. We happened to find a newspaper article. She would only say that this Tutu Katie came to her with them to Kauai High, that they went through this eating, and there was chanting and dancing, and then they went into the ocean. That's all she would remember talking about. And then when we did find this article, we found out that her lineage came from Katie Nakaula to her aunt, down to her, and then down, of course, to me. From my other aunt, who was in Kohala that my father sent me to, notice I'm being sent, okay, because my mother was spanking me too much. I remember telling that story. And my father said, okay, I send you to my cousin. There's a whole Kohala lineage that comes down through that kumu. Her, Margaret Moku, was also uniki'd by Auntie Iolani Luahine, while after learning from her. So there's that lineage too. And then there's a lot of other kumuhulas that I had the privilege of learning with, like coming to Oahu and meeting Daryl Ihilawakea Lupe Nui. It was through him that I learned how to enter and do hula competitions, okay? And he was the one that gave me a lot of my instruction on how to beat the ipu, how to chant, and how to do a lot, you know, because we were going through this whole change as we were coming through time too. So he was also one of my teachers. And I was exposed to a lot of teachers like Pat Bacon, through the Kalihi Palama Culture and Arts, Auntie Edith Mackenzie. There's been a lot of people that have been very influential in my life with hula. And so, and you know, finding out sometimes that they are related somehow in some way. But as far as the lineage part is concerned, you know, learning from them was such a joy to add to what I had already learned from when I love hula. I've always loved hula. And so the last kumu, like I said, was Uncle George Holokai. And he was the last one that I had taken hula from and had learned hula pahu, his style. And I think you did too, yeah, Sonny?
Yeah,
we were all in the same class, and so we
Paka
learned
too.
that. And Paka, right? So, and that was a whole different other style of dancing, wasn't it? And so when I did the presentation on Monday, it was to take me back to my roots. And that's why I did what I did. So mahalo for having me do that.
You're very, very welcome. And you spoke about a well-known kumu hula. And of course, that was Darryl Lupenui. And of course, his mother was Auntie Muriel Lupenui.
Yes.
And they come from Waialua
Yes.
on the island of Oahu. And his mother and my dad are cousins, they're related.
Oh.
And they come from that lineage of Waialua.
Waialua, yes.
And then, of course, they are both connected to Antone Ka'o'o, the famous kumu hula. Now, Antone Ka'o'o was also a famous runner. But I like to tell the story because Antone Ka'o'o lived through every ali'i and into the overthrow of the kingdom and the
yes.
provisional government. He lived through all the ali'i of that time that came into rule over Hawaii. So he is famous for the mele elili'ue nohonani mai.
Yes.
Right. Well, moving on to our kumu hula Sonny Ching, because I'm sure, you know, having these different kumu hula that you have spoken about, you can expound even much more about how they influence your life and who they were.
So, my hula, I come from a hula family, a family of hula and musicians. And when I was young, I never wanted to be a musician. I always wanted to be a dancer. And it wasn't until I got older and I realized, hey, the musician makes more than the dancer. But I'm the one doing all the work, not realizing they're doing their work too. You have to practice so that they can sound good. You have to refine your skills, know your language, all those things. But I come from a hula family. Then when I was 15, my cousin Bailey, and I actually talked about this on Wednesday, my cousin Bailey Henderson, who was a student of Kawaikapuokalani, called me and my other cousin and said, hey, you guys should come check out this halau it was at Ulumau Village. Well, at the time it was called Ulumau Village. And so my cousin and I went. And for me, it was the first halau experience because like Maelia, even though her grandma still taught, my grandma was pretty much retired. My grandma started teaching in the 30s. And really, she started teaching because of not only her grand aunt, Luika Peleka'io, who was a famous kumu hula from Laie, actually partnered or studied with Lokalia Montgomery. They were contemporaries. Then what am I saying now? So my grandmother was older, so she did not have a halau. Actually, one of the things that I saw where I was alive was when they were doing a trip across the United States, I believe. And this was in 1970 or 72. And that was like one of the first times I saw my grandma work with a big group. because even though she wasn't going to be on that tour, a lot of her dancers and dancers from the Church College of Hawaii out in Laie were going to go on this tour. So that's where my hula began, and then when I was 15, and my cousin had called me to come and go dance, check out this halau, because Kawaikapu was only a few years teaching at the time, maybe?
I started teaching in 1972. When that halau started, I think it was around 1979, 1980 maybe.
So that was going to be my first halau experience. And I asked, can I go? I asked my grandma, can I go? And she's like, yes, go. It would be good for you to go. To, again, expand, to kupu, to grow. And when I walked into my first class out at Ulumau Village, it was probably one of the most wonderful experiences that I have ever had, and especially at that time in my young life, because there was a spirituality that permeated the air when you walked into halau. Kuhai halau, Kawaikapuokalani, Lopaka hiko. And I could not believe the way that made me feel. And I was also very blessed to have wonderful, wonderful alakai, because I was not the eleu student. I was not the one that went to class, kumu taught us, and then went home and knew it all, could recall everything, and then come back next week and be makaukau to continue learning that mele or the next process. So my hula sisters would gladly, my alakai would gladly stay with me after class, and we'd go outside of the park to the front to this thing, gazebo, for lack of a better word, and we would chant and dance just so I could be at a decent level when I came back to the class. And I always want to tell this story. Actually, I wanted to tell it on Wednesday. One of my first performances that I did with the halau, Kumu had asked, we have this performance upcoming, is anyone available to participate? And I was fairly new, and I raised my hand. Me. I can do that show. And I remember him looking at me and saying, you sure? And I was like, yeah. And I don't know if Kumu remembers, but it was probably one of the most horrible performances of my life. He's probably sitting behind the ipu thinking, bloody hell. I would ask you if you was ready. Obviously you're not. I know we did a color out dance and I lost my car. It went flying out into the audience and hit somebody. I know we did a dance. The entire group is down, and there's Sonny Ching standing up with his hands in an angle. Yeah, it was not a very, but it taught me to be humble. It taught me to wait until my kumu said, I would like you to come and do this performance. I would like you to come and participate. When we moved from Kailua, it became difficult for me to travel to Ulumau Village for hula. And we had hula a couple times a week. But at the beginning, I would catch the bus, and I would be on the bus with 1, 2, 3 kala'au, long, medium, the ka, the short, dried la'i skirt, because that was part of our pahu that we used for practice. Uli uli, pu'ili, ili-ilis, all the implements on the city bus going over the mountain from Kapu'ulu to Ulumau Village. After it became too difficult for me to make that transfer, I stopped dancing. And after a while, I went to Lehua, who was a graduate of the Maiki, the Papa Lehua, I believe, from Halahulo Maiki. And there's also a connection between my grandma and Maiki. My grandpa used to drive her to school. when she was still Margaret. And when my grandma retired, I remember seeing her like planners and stuff. And so when she stopped dancing, she still entertained. So it would be like La Hula Rumba show for Maiki dancers. So I danced with Lehela for a number of years. And there was the one time I went to the Merry Monarch Festival as a dancer. It was with Lamalani Hula Academy under Lehela Ka'ehue. Then fast forward to my adult years, older adult years, we were invited to take a class, to become a part of a class that Uncle George Holokai was running. And it's actually the only teacher that Lopaka and I share. And for several years, we started at Paki and then moved to Kamehameha. We would, on Sundays, a whole bunch of kumuhula from various ages. We were kind of the older group in the back, went and learned the dances from Uncle George, from Tam Hiona and Lilian Makaena. One of the dances that we're going to do tomorrow is actually a version of Au'aia that Uncle George actually gave to us as keepers of that mele. And it's Au'aia done in what we call the Aiholo style. So the Au'aia that most people are familiar with is the Aiami style. But originally when I was asked to do this, my thought was, we're going to do the 3 Au'aias that we know. We know an Aihela version and an Aiholo version, and both of them were taught by Uncle George. They were both from Tam Hiona. And then we were going to do the Aiami with the group, with everyone for tomorrow's performance. As I think it was Leialoha had mentioned earlier, the drumming is different when you learn from different teachers. So the drumming for the Aiholo is different from the drumming for the Aihela, which is different from the drumming for the Aiami. Unfortunately, we did not have enough time to try and teach some of our students the Aihela version. But we did teach a group of men the Aiholo version for tomorrow's performance. So yeah, that's pretty much where we come from. I did also want to reflect on something that Leialoha also said, that she has is connected to many branches. And so are we. And it's not only, it's because we have, I always say I have 3 teachers that make up the foundation, our foundation. And that's my grandma, Kawaikapuokalani, and Lehela. Uncle George came later in my life. And while has contributed greatly to my learning and understanding, he really wasn't, I didn't know him or his mele when I started teaching. But we are, even though our teachings, our lineage might be different, our teachers are connected. Our teachers are connected somehow. My grandma is connected to her grandma. Her grandma is connected to Kawaikapu. My family is connected to Auntie Vicky. Through our hula genealogy, we are connected to Uncle George and to Leialoha. So while there is a difference in our learning and in our journey, there is an underlying connection to traditional hula people, I guess. Yeah. Kalamai, I know I talked too long.
I think it's very important that connections, what we call pilina, are, of course, brought to the forefront of tonight's discussion about hula. It's very important because it is through those connections that we are able to affirm one another in the tradition of hula. And that apono makes it possible. Really no different than creativity in hula. You see, if you plant a seed and you water it and the plant does not grow, there's no dynamics to the process. It's the same with hula. You want your haumana to grow in the tradition. But we all have to remember, in order to grow from a tradition, we cannot wander too far from the foundation. So when you plant the seed, the aina is still the aina. While in hula, creativity has to be a reflection of the foundation of the teacher and that tradition. So it was around 1978, and I actually started teaching hula in 1972, but in 1978, 79, 80, when all these young people came to learn hula, we would have these fabulous ho'ike of hula. And it is that time that I had kuleana responsibility to invite the kumuhula at that time to come and apono, to confirm tradition, and to ke, which is to criticize. And after every ho'ike, I would talk to each and every one of them for their mana'o, and those teachers included Auntie Kau'i Zudemeister, my grandmother's cousin, and of course Auntie Sally Kawaikapuokalani Woods, Nalua'i, who was my grandmother's teacher. My grandmother was already not alive at that time. And then we had Auntie Lina Guerrero, Sonny's grandmother, because Auntie Lina, my grandmother, traveled to Japan with Church College of Hawaii, that's what it was called back then, and they did these hula performances. So they took my grandmother and my grandfather, and then we have Maelia's grandmother, that is Auntie Maelia Loebenstein, and so we're going to now change them to that, because I may have said this earlier, I'll say it again. Auntie Mae Loebenstein was very, very instrumental in working with me as a young kumuhula back then about rules, responsibilities, disciplines, focuses, intentions, functions. And so I had to learn all of that. So you're not only learning pahu dances and ipu dances and costume and leis and adornments, there's a whole huge responsibility you have as a kumuhula. So I'm going to ask Mae Tau to reflect now on her teachers.
So, unlike most of everybody here, my kumu was my grandmother, Me Ulalia Long Loebenstein. We come from a family of hula. Her mother, Ida Pakulani Ka'aihue Kai'anui Long from Hana, studied with her grand-uncle Kamavae, who was considered the Grand Master of Maui. But as we have learned through this week, he came through Laie. With Niu La'a and Kanuku Kamanu, Kapamanu.
And they were also the teachers of Lokalia and Luika.
Exactly. And so my great-grandmother, when she was a young girl, she was maybe 7 or 8 when her grand-uncle came to pick her, to select her, to go and study hula. And she lived with him until she was about 13, when she had her uniki. And then she had 15 children. Well, she had 17. 2 died as infants. But she had 15 children, 7 boys, 7 girls, 6 boys, and then, she had 15 children. 2 had passed away. My grandmother was number 2. She was the oldest girl. And as it was in the time, she was sent to Honolulu. Her brother that was above her was sent to Honolulu to come to St. Louis. She was sent to St. Andrew's Priory. Everybody else had to stay home. They went to public school. My great-grandmother's grandmother, Ulalia Keohe'e, was also in hula. She was a kubu hula. And so our line comes through the women, our line from Hana. So my grandmother, when she came to Honolulu as a young girl, she was very blessed. At the Priory, she had gone to school with the Braze sisters. And I believe Uncle Sai on Tuesday had talked about Daddy Bray and Lida Bray, right? Whether it was Lydia, they called them Daddy and Mama Bray. But the Bray sisters were at St. Andrews, they were boarders, and they kind of rallied up all the Hapahaole girls to dance hula for this Bray performing troupe. But Daddy Bray was a kahuna, and they were both very well known in hula. So that is where my grandmother met Sonny's grandmother, met Auntie Alice Kawaikapuokalani. There's pictures of them as young girls, as dancers, later as musicians. And my grandmother had shared with me later in her life about there was only one time that she knew of that her mother was disappointed with her. And it was because she had gone through the rites of uniki here in Honolulu with the Brays without her mother's permission. Because at that time, my grandparents had kind of, it was kind of turn of the century, they had put away their Hawaiian ways to accept the new way of Christianity, of we're now going into a territory. And so my great-grandmother had put aside the hula, the sacred hula, the hula pahu, the things that the church frowned on. And so when my grandmother had explained to her that she had gone through this uniki with Ailolo, she had said that her mother stopped speaking to her. And for my grandmother to tell me this, because I was always the one that was in trouble. I was always getting into trouble because when your grandmother is your kumu and you live with your kumu, there is a different expectation than when you're a haumana that goes to hula and goes home. Because there's no break when you live with your kumus. And so as I was growing up in the hula, my story is a little different. I didn't want to dance. I wanted to play. And my grandmother was like, by hook or by crook, you're gonna stop fighting me and you're going to do this. Because as my grandmother was going through her journey, later when she was with Auntie Lena, they were best of friends, they danced together, they played music together with Auntie Alice Kawaikapuokalani Garner. Sonny's mom and my mom then became the hula dancers. And my mother at 18 decided she was not going to be the hula dancer, and she left Hawaii. She went to go to the continent, went to school, and walked away. So I have 5 older siblings that were all born on the continent, so was I. But there's a big gap between me and the brother above me. And my mother later, as I was starting to be a little rebellious, was like, listen, I gave birth to you for her. You are not walking away from this. So get your head where it needs to be and get back to your grandmother. And that was my journey of living with my kumu, growing, fighting tooth and nail, going, no, I don't want to do this. Until my grandmother said, one day, you're gonna thank me for this. And so when I was 17 and I got here to the University of Hawaii, a very immature 17, I was like, okay, I want an easy A. I'm gonna take a hula class. So I needed to boost the GPA. And so Ed Kalahiki, who was a student of Auntie Mikey, was teaching here at the university. And so I joined his class. Totally different from my grandmother, night and day. Because the first hula I learned with him was a hula pahu. Aya iwai piopa ka'alana. No clue, I had never danced hula pahu in my life. So I go home all proud, and I tell my grandma, guess what we did in class today? And she's like, what? And I told her, this lady got in her car and drove down to the university and proceeded to chew him out. And I just stood there like, oh my God, grandmother is so embarrassing. And he stood there and he goes, yes, Auntie, I understand. She said, you had no right to teach these dancers. She goes, they don't know what the hell they're doing. And she's like, and you gave all of these inexperienced dancers this hula pahu. How dare you? She's not dancing this. I didn't even have the heart to tell her that we had gone through the dressing. We had learned olile. We had learned all of the protocols that went with uniki. She was not pleased. She said, I will tell you what you can teach her. Otherwise, she drops the class. I didn't argue. He didn't argue. So I got to go to class, but when it came time for the grade, I had a different curve of what I presented. And so when I was, and what I will credit, and I always mahalo Uncle Ed for, is learning to find my voice to Oli. Because as a child, you have now the kids, their leo is so rich, they grow up with Olelo Hawaii, so Oli becomes so natural for them. When we were growing up in the 70s and dancing, Oli was not a prerequisite in hula. You know, we had immature voices. We didn't have the kind of ike and pilina to the mele because we just did what our kumu told us to do. So coming to the university and studying with Ed really taught me how to Oli, and I'm forever grateful for that. But my grandmother won, and she's like, are you done with all of this nonsense? Are you done fighting me? And she's like, because why? Why are you going to awana all over the place when you live right here? And the thing is, when you are disrespectful to your kumu, the faucet turns off. She's like, why? You don't want to learn, you're not interested. So when I finally found my humble pie, took me a few years to find, because she's like, you know, you're coming to the university, you book smart. You're a book smart Hawaiian. She's like, you're not learning Hawaiian. She's like, you're sounding like a haole. She's like, when you're ready, the faucet will turn back on. So I was maybe about 20 when I got myself together, and she's like, now you're ready. And that was when every day, every night, if it was 3 o'clock in the morning, if there was a storm going on, if some kind of inspiration came to her, get up and dance. I want to teach you this. And I will share one thing about, you know, we talk about hula pahu and being ready. So another thing with my grandmother was mele ma'i, the procreation chants. Never danced one in my life because she's like, you don't have ike. So in my little rebellious time, when I finally had come home one day, and she's like, you ready to learn something? And I was like, yeah, okay, what are we learning? She goes, he ma'i no iolani. And I stood there, and I'm like, a mele ma'i? And she's like, yes. And I was like, why? And she goes, you have ike, don't you? And I'm like looking at my mom, and my mom is like, stupid, stupid, stupid girl. And I was like, do I lie? What do I say? Either way, I'm going to get it. And that was my grandmother's way of saying, you cannot fool me for very much. You know, your kumu can look at you and know where you are. And so that's my experience.
So,
yeah.
to tell you a story after this.
But yeah, so for me.
About mele ma'i and everything.
Yeah, mele
and
ma'i.
that same ma'i.
Oh my God. Yeah, it must have been because of you, that's why. So I am very blessed that in our ohana, so my grandmother, her sister, Auntie Kahili, that was on the video last night, and then there's one more sister, my Auntie Leana Woodside, who is the youngest of the girls, all were kumuhula. And so all they're in my ohana now, all of those sisters have lala. My cousins and I teach hula, and we perpetuate our family lineage.
And I'm just happy to say I knew all of them.
I know.
And I interacted with all of them.
All of it. And most of the time when my grandmother was going after me, he saw.
Yep.
He would just stood there like, yes.
But those are fabulous memories, you know, and you spoke about something really, really important, and that is, for many haumana of hula, they go to halau, they go for 2 or 3 hours of practice, and then they go home. You're living with your kumuhula. You're living not only lineage, but you're living legacy. And that's hula 24 hours. So you're learning the disciplines and all the traditions that come with those disciplines. And so at the end of the day, you don't get a break. You're hula all day, all night long. Now, Leimomi, you talked about your kumuhula in a very affectionate way. You addressed her as mama. So I am guessing your stories are going to be very similar in how you were trained in the hula.
Well, you know, we've been told that you don't look for the hula. Hula will find you. And what I've been told by my parents, that I danced hula when I was 3 years old. So I guess they taught me to walk, to hula before they taught me to walk. But my first kumu was on the island of Kauai, Auntie Helen Waia'u. From there, we moved to Honolulu when I was 8 years old. And my neighbor was a student of Sam Naiole. And I still wanted to hula. So I asked her if she would take me with her and let her meet her kumu so I could see if I could be part of that. So that's when I became a hauman of Sam Naiole. From there, my dad was a classmate of John P. Ilani Watkins. And so he found out I was a dancer and asked my dad if he could have me come and learn from him. So I went there. And then our family, he's a relative to my dad, Joseph Kahaulelio. He then found out I was dancing, so then he wanted me, so off I went to Uncle Joe. And Uncle Joe at the time was playing with Auntie Pauline, Auntie Shorty, and Mama Vicky. And that's how Mama Vicky came into my life. But all these others are still a part of who I am. Though I credit Mama for what I've become, it's because she then took me home when I was 9 years old and raised me as her punahele. And like Maelia, you live with them 24/7. And I remember times she would say, okay, stand up, dance. And I was like, I don't want to dance. Why I have to dance? Or I want to go with my friends. I would run away, go out the kitchen door, come home. Where did you go? Time to hula. And, you know, it was that kind of stuff, and you can't get away from it. But I'm mahalo akua for Mama not giving up on me, because if she did, I would not be who I am today. But I am blessed that my life has been touched by the greats of hula. Through Mama, I've learned dances from Auntie Io, Auntie Lokalia. And when Mama passed, you see, in hula tradition, we go through what we call the rites of becoming a kumu, which are uniki rites. That is yes, but there also is the ha, or the breath that you can get from your kumu. And for me, I was given the ha from Mama. Then when Mama passed, Auntie Kikauilani Kalama called me and took me under her wings. She felt she needed to complete what her cousin did not complete. And I was fine, because I was taught the ha was so important. But then they didn't think so, so you don't argue with the kupuna. So Auntie Nana took me under her wings and took me through the uniki rites, and that's how I met brother, because of our classes. But I was stubborn too, I didn't want to. So I went to uniki twice, because the first time she didn't finish me at Kumu, we only went to Opa, because I was hard-headed. I didn't want to, I kept stalling, no, I don't want to do this, why are you doing this? Don't, you know? And that happens, you cannot fight it. But hula's not going to give up, because he did it. When she started again the second time around, I said, okay, she means business. There is a reason. So let's go through with it. She's willing to share this with me. And how blessed I am that I've been chosen to go through this. Because they pick who they want, you know. They're very fussy. They don't just give to anybody or share with anybody. It's going to be, if it's you, you're lucky it's you. And take it and run with it. I learned that the hard way. But I got through it, and mahalo kia kua for all of these great people that has touched my life and believed in me, because I am what I am today because of their belief in me.
So that's very important. What you're reflecting is ike aku, ike mai, which is always to remember and recognize, and this is how the discussion started, is to know and understand where that knowledge comes from and who that knowledge is being given to. And Lopaka, you're here, and your kumu is here, and your kumu is here, and you have so many things to reflect on that, I think, right? Ike aku, ike mai. So now is your manava, your opportunity to speak about that, because I would love to hear that myself.
Okay. I was fortunate to grow up in a home with a lot of music and hula. I come from a family of musicians and olapa. I started learning hula really from my mom. My sisters were in Halau. They were with Ilima Hula Studio, Auntie Luca and Auntie Louise. I had two male cousins, Darren and Clay, that danced for the men of Waimapuna. So those were the three of my sisters and the two male dancers. And I was always infatuated with dancing because we had hula in our home constantly. When you have a lot of children and the family is big, back then, we would come together not to go out, but to do something at home. And music and dance was a weekend thing, and playing cards, and the children coming together. That's how I grew up. It wasn't until, and my mother was not a kumuhula. I want to make that clear. She was a woman that loved to dance, and she was a student of Grandma Lena and Auntie May and Auntie Alice. She was hula sisters to Auntie Marjorie Kekaoha, who I talked about earlier. Her sister, Auntie Kanoi Souza, and Kumusani's mom, what came later, because they're like 10 years, she's 10 years younger than my mom, and then Maelia's mother as well. So there's that connection right there of where our hula came from in our home. It wasn't until I was 8 years old and my mother put me in choirs, the Hawaii Children's Chorus, and then we moved to the Honolulu Boy Choir, and there was a young gentleman there, Hoku Rasmussen, that was teaching, who came from Dara Lupanui, was given permission to teach in the boy choir. He and Chinky Mohoy started venturing out at the same time. I believe Chinky was with the Kailua Magicals and Hoku was with the Honolulu Boy Choir. And our halau name was Ku'aiwa Kama'ehu. That is my first formal training of hula. And I danced for him until his passing in 1984. At that time, I thought, okay, my hula is pau. I don't know where to go. Because I did want to try and go to Darrow, but Darrow didn't take keiki. It was only men. So that's how I ended up with Hoku Rasmussen. So when Hoku passed away, I thought, okay, well, Paul, I don't know where else to go. And I came across a beautiful woman, and I loved dearly, Auntie Denise Kauhiona Mauna Kia Ramento, and her brother Dennis Kia, and they were teaching out of Waipahu. I'm from Manana, so my mom took me there, and that's where I continued my hula, but I also learned Polynesian dances there, which kind of widened my ike on being able to perform not just hula, but also the Samoan, the Tahitian, the Maori, and I loved it. I've always loved to hula or to dance. I mean, I find my greatest pleasure when I am doing that until today. So I was growing up, then you graduate from high school, and then you want to go out and make money. You want to work, and I don't want to work a regular job. How about I go dance in the Polynesian shows and luau's and make good money, go to college, and just goof around. Because you're only 17 when I started with Tihati Productions and all of that. It wasn't until 1990 when I met Kumusani Ching. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know the connection and our family connection at all. My sisters did, but not I. I was the youngest one, so I did my own thing. And it wasn't until my Auntie Kapeka had passed away and we all had the whole level, and his kupuna performed, well, not performed, hulaed at the whole level. And I was like, wow, that's really pretty. And I guess at that time I was looking for something else, but I didn't know it at the time. That I wanted to further my hula, but I didn't know it at the time. And we had met, we had talked, and I didn't know he had a halau, or this kupuna, and I think it was 5 women, I think, at the time. And he said, well, come hula then. I live in Manana, he lives in Kapahulu. So I'm like, wow, that's kind of far. And, you know, people know, if you live the west side, you don't cross Kalihi. You live the east side, you don't cross Kalihi. We stay on our own side. So I was really malihini on this side of the island, but I now reside on this side of the island. And I went to hula and I danced with the kupuna, but I got kind of tired dancing with the kupuna because, you know, I want to dance with people my age, and can I dance with other men? You know, I'm dancing with my mother them. So he said, go out and look. And I did. And then I brought maybe 7 or 8 men, I can't remember. And we started the Kane line. How from there to where I'm at now, I will tell you that I did not set out to become a kumuhula. That's far from my mind. I thought I would just get a regular office job, grow up, be an accountant or something, insurance man or something, and live my life. But I found that, I think, I forgot who said, hula chooses you. Was it you, Auntie? Yes? It found me. I didn't choose it. It found me. And because, like I said, when I hula, you feel most beautiful, no matter what type or what kind of day you have, what's going on in your life. When you dance, it takes you away. And I can say that till today. So I've been a part of Halona Mamopanahulu for 35 years out of the 38 years. I did not set out to become a kumuhula, like I said. I just wanted to hula. It happened. And I allowed it to happen. And that's how I'm able to say I'm sitting here and everything has come to me, but I had to embrace it. And that's what I've been doing as tonight. I'm embracing the moment and hearing the mo'olelo and the pilina because we are connected. There's more about May that I didn't know. And believe me, she's my tita, but we don't talk about these things, right?
Not all
It's
the
something
time.
that we don't talk about.
Yeah. We go to
And-
breakfast frequently, but we
We complain about children.
that's what we mostly talk about at our breakfasts.
But that's how my teachers, from Hoku Rasmussen to the Kias to Kumusani, and then lastly, Uncle George Holokai. And I was only in Alakai, and the classes was only for Kumuhula. I don't know how I don't
And
remember how I
Alakai.
got
And
out
they're
there.
Alakai.
And the Alakai
But the
too?
Kumu had to attend the class.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to say that we share one Kumu together. But he is my nui. He is my senior. I am not his equal, nor will I ever be. When it comes to certain things, I will conform to him. He's still here. And his word has much value behind that. And there's a reason why he would say yes or no. And I just say, okay. But that's my genealogy of hula.
I also want to, Kalamai Kumu.
Go
I
right
just want to
ahead.
say a little bit about my teacher's connection to him. Maybe because he was never formally their student, their relationship is different from our relationship. I cannot believe the ease and comfortability that he has in calling my kumu and asking him questions where I'm petrified. Oh, should I call him? Should I call him? Because I was a teenager, so I revert right back to being a teenager, even though I'm way past being a teenager at this point. And I've also been very grateful that my teachers, like Kawaikapuokalani Hewitt, has embraced Lopaka and has, like I said, though not formally a student of the Halo, has taught Lopaka on many occasions. On many occasions when I've asked to go back and learn something that I perhaps was taught and then forgot, Kumu would always invite Lopaka to come and learn the dance along with me relearning the dance. So I'm very grateful for that. So even though we formally only share one teacher, he really has experienced at least two other of my teachers, and the main one being Kawaikapu.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, tonight, the presentation started off with me explaining the kupu process of how from a child you grow into being a teenager, and you go from a teenager becoming a parent, and then a parent into a kupuna, and then you journey off into the spiritual world, to the world of Aumakua. On stage tonight, you see a good representation of the different age groups and their processes in the tradition of the hula, from Leialoha Lim Amina, Kumu Sonny Ching, Kumu Maelia Loebenstein Carter, Kumu Leimomi Ho, and Kumu Lopaka Igarta-De Vera. And then you have me over here, and just being kind of the moderator directing tonight's discussion. Well, we're coming to the closing of tonight's panel, and I would like to thank the Asia Pacific Dance Festival for making this possible, so we can not only have this discussion, but we can continue with discussion in the future. You know, I look forward to that, because hula is really a lifestyle, and hula is unique to Hawaii and the traditions of Hawaii. I would also like to thank the people that directed this process, and can you let us know what their names are?
So Dr. Tim Slaughter, who's the one who kind of got me involved in this, I don't know how many years ago, and I can't seem to walk away again. But Tim Slaughter and Shin Roo Young, who is the creative director, and then M, who is the Kennedy, he's doing all of our tech and is so patient because the running joke is trying to get Kumu Hula to send things in a timely process. It's like herding cats because we always are changing our inspiration, and so sometimes the deadlines don't work for us. So thank you for being so patient with all of us.
And this is my first time, and I'm really having a wonderful time from the first day that we did our first hula workshop. And we'll perform those numbers. We did 2 numbers. I taught a hula pahu ka eke eke, and then I taught a hula olapa with the ipu. And of course, the students that registered came to learn. And after I did the initial teaching, May would come and do the refinement. So tomorrow night we have a show beginning at what time?
7:30.
7:30, and where is it going to be?
Right here at Kennedy Theater.
So if you are out there in live and listening, there is going to be a concert. And how many halawa performing tomorrow?
There'll be 3. It'll be Sonny and Lopaka, na mama o Pu'uana Hulu, and Leialoha, and her ohana, and then it'll be myself and Ka'uanoyo Va'ahila. And you know, it's a real treat because we don't get to do this often together. And so we're all very excited. We're a little ha'alulu, you know, things like this because we have a kumunui here, our lo'ea, our lehua, that has asked us to come together, and we will be maka'ukau, and we are excited to present this kupuana process.
And also, I'd like to thank you all for being here this evening. And before we close, we have maybe 5-10 minutes left. If any of you have a question, I'm going to ask you, if you do, to walk up to the front so we can hear you clearly. If you don't have a question, that's fine too. I'm sure they have a lot to talk about. But if you'd like to come here, if you have any question that you'd like to address our panel with, please feel free to do so. Whether it's a question or just a thought, anything you'd like to reflect on, come to the front here. And if anybody is deciding to come up, I'm going to share a little bit about my hula life. Yes, come to the front, please. Yep, come to the front. So we can hear you, yeah?
Hello, Leimomi.
Oh,
How are you?
Surprise! How are
Good to see
you?
So my question is, last night I learned for the first time about the concept of ho'oke, and I was wondering to what extent that process of critique informed your hula and how you encountered that in your teaching. Yeah.
So she's speaking about a very old tradition, and I lived through it. I know it. It was Auntie Emma DeFries who made that possible. So ho'oke has 2 meanings. One is to fast. The other is where you invite teachers to come to your school and to criticize your work, whether good or bad. And it's a great part of the learning process. And much of it happens when you do a hula ho'ike. You invite those teachers that are connected to you, and you invite those teachers that are not connected to you. You invite those teachers that like you, and you invite those teachers that may not like you or do not like you. That is the only way you're going to know and understand what you need to do, what you need to improve on. And then again, it's all a process for learning. So I did mention that last night because lots of people are not connected to that process anymore. Yet, it was a true tradition and the process of learning through the hula. So anybody want to reflect on that? It's called ho'oke. Ho'oke.
Yeah.
Accent on the E, the ke.
ho'oke.
So a little bit about, to add to that, that's also, it's somewhat related to uniki also. So when you, like when I say I uniki'd Lopaka, I really didn't uniki him. I presented him. And I presented him to other kumuhula. Not only my teachers, but I invited different kumuhula. So there was Kili'i Raichel, Leina Kalamahaini, her cousin, Hokulani Holt, Nalani Kanaka Ole, to represent different lines of hula. And I actually, so a part of that process was for them to acknowledge and determine if they were ready to become kumuhula. That's part of that, yeah, kumu. That would be part of that ho'oke process. I also remember doing a concert in the late 90s at Bishop Museum in Bishop Hall, and it was a Christmas concert. I forgot, we did it a couple of years. And at the time, I would invite all of the hula, hula people, and Auntie Pat came, Auntie Edith came, and when Auntie Pat actually came to the performance, I kind of freaked out, because we were going to do a pahu that I created called Kealoha Keakua, which is based on Corinthians from the Bible. And it was a Christmas concert. So I was like, oh my gosh, we're going to be doing this pahu that I created. I need to say something about it in my talk before the performance begins, that it was a modern day pahu. Trying to use the traditional elements, but it was not a traditional pahu or something that was handed down to me. It was something that I created. And I remember after the performance, she coming and thanking, and me, of course, thanking her for coming to the performance. And then immediately I'm trying to apologize about the pahu. And I just felt like maybe I was being offensive. And it's not offensive at all. We actually performed that dance till today. But I remember telling her, and she put her hand on my shoulder and said, "My hopo hopo, you said what it was at the beginning." So I was prepared for it. But that's also that criticism. And I believe this ho'oke process should always be constructive, never destructive.
Now, the other ho'oke that you were talking about is like the fasting part, right? That was something that we did practice, especially like if we're doing like a big performance. That came from my mother. That was something that we did. So we did do fasting, and it does help you with your processing of you, because it's all about you. It's a personal thing. We would have our haumana go through that, and also go through pikai too. Before we would do a big performance, like even if we went to Mary Monarch for a presentation, and I call it a presentation even though it was a competition, the viewpoint that I had was to do a presentation. And that's what we would do. So that's on the other side of ho'oke, because that's a very personal thing. It prepares the haumana to focus on their hula that they had learned and what they're going to present. Because I'm all about being very inspirational on what the composer meant, not you. So they would have to sit with themselves and think about all of the motions and the emotions and all of the research that they would do for a presentation like that. So that's ho'oke that I knew that we would practice, and we still do practice.
So in hula competition, what you have are luna loi loi. That's entirely different from ho'oke. You have the mea ho'oke, and like I say, you invite them specifically to hear that criticism. They will come to your ho'ike, they will come to your uniki, but they come through invitation. Everybody back then knew the purpose and the intent. Today it's a little hazy. Purpose and intent with the old traditions. In competition, we learn that someone is going to judge you. That word is the luna loi loi, or the mea loi loi. In a sense, you are learning from the criticism or how their encouragement as they write notes. You have a score sheet. In the whole okay, they hit you directly. They will come to you directly. For example, one year I wore a red tea leaf skirt. Now, I come from a tradition that allows the red tea leaf skirt. But I invited a teacher who does not have the same tradition. Now, regardless if I have a tradition that is strong in wearing that skirt, I had to sit and listen to that criticism about why this was not appropriate. And in the ho'oke, like the fasting from the food, you have to fast from your mouth. You are not allowed to reply. You sit and you listen. You absorb it out, all of it. You thank them, and everyone is dismissed. If your kumuhula is still alive, then you go back to your kumuhula, and then you discuss. If not, you have to learn from the process. You never argue the process, but you listen. Goes back to what our kupuna said. Po'olohe me ka pepe au, pa'ako waha, nana me ka maka, oia ke anu o ke kupu wana, mai ko wā kamaiki, a hiki I ko wā o pio. Mai ko wā o pio, a hiki I ko wā mahua. Mai ko wā mahua, a hiki I ko kupuna ana. Ho'olohe. Nāna me ka maka, ike aku ike mai. Oia ke anu, o nā kupu, nā kupuna. And that's how you learn.
Yeah.
We are truly running out of time, ladies and gentlemen. Again, I want to thank these fabulous kumuhula that came to present to you all today. If there are no more questions, mai ka'i, it's been a fabulous night. I'm going to allow them each to say a few closing words tonight. And when we get to Lopaka here at the very end, pau ponono, our kuleana for this evening, pau ponono, we're done. Again, you can return home safely. We can all, but come back tomorrow for the ho'ike. Leialoha.
Aye.
Please.
This function, I've got to say, mahalo for inviting me, because having to go back and reflect when I started to learn hula pahu, what the process that I went through. I mean, it was really amazing to go delving back into the past and then trying to bring it to the to the future. It reminded me of so many things that you just learn, but you don't reflect on, and now you do, because it's been years since you learned it. I've got to say that's been one of the most amazing telling things for me for this. Mahalo for having me come and participate. I really am grateful. Mahalo.
So I wasn't going to say that, but after she said it, I really need to concur. First of all, I was nervous to be asked to do this. But whenever my kumu asks, believe me, I jump. My students actually laugh when they see me, like the way I behave in his presence. Because in my world, I am the dominant force. And then like I said, I revert right back to being 15 years old, even though I'm far past 15. But I think one of the things that I've gained, and now that this is coming to an end, this evening is coming to an end, is that opportunity to reflect. To reflect back on the past and listening to everyone's process and listening to the stories, connecting my learning, my journey, with some of those same stories. As Maelia was talking, I leaned over and I said, I got to tell you one story after about the same things she was talking about. So yeah, I really mahalo this opportunity to reflect, especially because we've been teaching for a while now, every single one of us sitting here. And we don't often get that opportunity when you're living the life that you live, when you're living the life of hula. So mahalo to the Asian Pacific Dance Festival, mahalo to Kawaikapuokalani and Maelia for allowing that hali, or that fond memory, opportunity to recall these fond memories. Yeah. So mahalo. And yeah, come tomorrow. You're going to see a nice array of, we're doing all hula pahu. And I think we're doing maybe 6 different hula pahu tomorrow.
I'll have to agree on that. And I think, too, what has been beautiful about this week and seeing everybody with their aha moment, no matter where they are in their hula journey, is to remember that hula is way more than a physical dance. And I think for me, coming into this and tapping into everything that I learned from my grandmother, because as a child growing up in that home, all I heard was pa'akowaha, just cha, enough already. And she used to say, be a sponge, because you know, like how he said, I'm his hali, I'm his Uber. That's what I did for my grandmother. Growing up, from the time I was 15, I took her everywhere. I drove her everywhere. My mother lived with her. I lived on my own. We were all going to the same destination. I still had to go get my grandmother and take her, because that was my job. And it was so beautiful because I grew up as this little opihi to her, and I was a sponge. She used to say, don't say a word. Children are seen and not heard. I used to sit under the table while she played music. I used to be at the Kahala Hilton underneath the table, all of the workers bringing sliding food under the table, because, you know, CPS would have come if they had found me. But she used to say, she used to go with all of the different kumu of the time, all of the musicians, sit and listen. And when I think about all those lessons, what they talked about wasn't just the hula. It was the spirituality of it. It was all of the lessons, the vahi'ina monau kano onoo, as Kawaikapu always says, little food tidbits for you to think about and ponder on, because those are the memories for me and of my kumu that I cherish, not just the dances. The physical part, she said, I can teach anybody to dance the hula. But to be an olapa, to be an alaka'i, and to be a kumu took a whole nother level of training. And that's what I mahalo her for. And now to have him reinforcing that. So, mahalo nui.
Thank you. Leimomi.
Mahalo for having me this evening. I am humbled to sit amongst them, my peers. Mama left, halau opened. Mama left 3 years after that. So I had to learn how to be a kumu. But thank you to all of these kumu and the many that have surrounded my life and blessed me, that has helped me to grow, to become the kumu that I am today. But my life has been rich because of hula. You know, in hula, it's life, yeah? We see, we smell, we taste. Most of all, we feel. Everything about life is in hula and how we express it. But I'm humbled to be here amongst them who have given me so much and taught me so much. Mahalo nui.
Lopaka. Mahalo nui, everyone, for allowing me to be here and again to sit with these wonderful people. I'm right here with Auntie Momi, and You know, they're all my senior, and I'm really humbled to be able to sit here and to share what little or what a lot I know, and to be accepted into this realm of kumuhula. It's always frightening to have to come into an arena where you're the li'i, the youngest. But
He likes to always say that. Yeah, we get it.
But you know, it's as I sit here, I am growing as we talk, because it's allowing me to reflect everything I have done and to think about what I haven't done yet. And that's what's really inspiring me right now. I have a long road ahead of me of learning, but I'm grateful for what I do know and for what Sonny has taught me. All of these kumuhula here that sit here that have taught me. It may not be a dance, it can just be words of wisdom. And that can carry you through so that you make the correct decisions on how you speak and how you behave in front of people, because our kuleana is not only to represent ourselves and our halal, but all those that have come before us and to be examples to those that will come after. So I mahalo all of you, kumu Lehua, for allowing me to be here, kumu Maelia, and Leimomi, Leialoha, and of course kumu Sonny. We're now kumu, but it's very different sitting together in a panel than it is when we're in halal teaching. This is a different role that we're playing right now. And being able to express myself in a way that I normally wouldn't. Because again, we don't talk about these things. It's kept quiet. You don't, you know, I always say, "May valao," you don't need to talk and share everything. It's not for everyone to know. Unless we're in an arena that the purpose is to enlighten someone, and that someone can be ourselves. So mahalo nui for having me.
No, go right ahead, you can clap. I want to end this discussion or this presentation the way it began, and to express pono. The kupu process is a pono process. There's always a beginning, a way to open. There's always a way to close. There is a format. And when you can be in the presence of an elder kumuhula who understands and knows that, nobody going to run away over here. I'm going to catch them, and I'm going to make sure they're all in check. And that's the order, right? Because you have to have order in everything that you do in hula. You cannot have disorder in hula, you see. So the process, the protocol, the roles and responsibilities are great in the tradition. We started with an oli that was a blessing that opened the doorway. I'm going to use the same oli to close, because again, as we invite the spirits of the kupuna to come and be a part of our discussion, because there are kumuhula that enriched each and every one of our lives. Now we say the prayer to send them all to their places. So as you go to your place, we go to our place. All the things that are blessed in between, that continues in the tradition of hula. Aloha mai oe ke akua I loko kalani e kalani kau I ke alane o ka ako o mai oe ke akua mahalo ya oe e ke akua no ko aloha mahalo no e ke akua no ke ola o ka aina ke ola o nā pua ke ola o nā ali'i o Hawaii nei, mahalo ia oe ke akua, ke aloha nui no, aloha e, aloha e, aloha e. And please join me in saying, mahalo ke akua.
Mahalo ke akua.
Good night, everyone. Thank you. Aloha.